Welcome back to another episode of Aridzine, but today we're not going to be spending any time in the Aridzine greenhouse of dreams. No, I'm taking you somewhere altogether different, somewhere with a very different purpose indeed. In fact, let me take you there right now. That's right, today we're going to be spending our time in what I'm calling the Aridzine Summer Rest House. It's finished, finally, mercifully, I got the thing done. And I'm so excited to start moving my plants in here. However, most of the plants that are going in here are actually dormant right now, to the extent that they just look like empty pots of dirt. It'd be a pretty boring video if all I was doing was showing you pots that look like nothing. So what I do intend to do today is share with you some of the plants that are sleeping right now, show you what they'll look like when they wake up. And I'll tell you what, many of them are fantastically bizarre, very niche and incredibly obscure, and I can guarantee you that there will be at least a few that you've never seen in your life. So stick around as I fill this place up, and I will fill it up. I'll tell you what, I'm going to need a whole new growing space. Here we go. Now I've got two species of winter growing plants that are not going into the rest house today. The first one is this Albuca brucebayeri. Now, as you can see, it's already broken dormancy, but they usually break dormancy in the summertime and they need plenty of light. So I'm happy to bring them out, expose them to the weather. Being exposed to the full blasting sun of summer gives them these beautiful, curly, twisty, corkscrew, helix-like leaves. And you can see this one's already flowered. I've got a seed pod just waiting to burst open. They're actually really hard to pollinate, but I did get 2 seed pods. So I'm excited to keep going. The cool thing about this is it's a bulb. Now, I was really actually kind of too slow in repotting these. If I shake out the top of the soil, you can actually see that this bulb here is completely occupying the pot. The pot itself is kind of bulging out. So when it goes to sleep later on in the year, I'm really going to need to get this guy and its brothers and sisters out of their pots and into some new homes. The other species that is definitely not going into that summer rest house is this one, Euphorbia eclonii. Doesn't look like much at the moment, it's just broken dormancy. But this one and its partner that I have in the greenhouse, they've been sleeping in the back corner over there all summer long. And they're just breaking dormancy now. And last year I had 8 of them. And as they were breaking dormancy, I got a little bit overexcited, moved them around, started watering them, and killed 6 of them. So I'm taking a very gently approach this year. They're going to stay in their back corner, slowly come out of rest, and only when I'm satisfied that they're ready for it, they're going to go in there. But this species is one of my absolute favorites, and I'll be shattered if I lose this one. So here's hoping. Now, let's have a look at the plants that are going to go in there, shall we? All right, this, I think, is the extent of everything that needs to go in there today. I don't even know where to start. I got heaps of these little seedling pots that are loaded with seedlings that will undoubtedly need more space. This is why I can tell that this thing is going to be completely filled up. It's going to be a tricky one, but I love a challenge, so let's see how we go. It's a bit like packing the back of a car, right? When you go on holidays, you find a way to do it. You can fit everything in. I just hope I can fit all of this stuff in. All right, suppose we just need to get started. So I reckon the best way to approach this is prioritizing the rare and the weird, and then we can narrow it down from there. So I'll start with this pair of plants. These are both Authonas. Authonas are a caudiciform member of the Asteraceae family, which is essentially the daisy family of plants. And when they flower, they do look just like flowering daisies. This is Authona cremnophylla, which when it's in growth, it'll have these big leaves. But the interesting thing about it is its stem in time kind of gets covered in this thick white fuzz, almost like it's smothered in mealybugs, which I guess can be a little bit disconcerting. And this one is Authona herrii, which, well, I think it speaks for itself. You can see its stem is covered in these fantastic warty tubercles. Again, when it's out of dormancy, it'll have these big green leaves coming out the top. Really interesting and fantastic plants. I do know that I've got at least a couple that have been chewed on by rats, unfortunately, so let's get these into the rat-proof cage here. I'll get them out of their pots and see what's going under the ground, give them a bit of a freshen up in terms of soil, and then they can move in. Most of the root mass there just desiccated, fell right away, so makes this job pretty easy. But it won't cause it a problem. It'll put out new feeder roots when it starts to be watered. How about this guy? Yeah, similar story. Very dusty, very dry. But you've got to remember, in habitat, these plants would go 6 months a year or even longer without water. And they're adapted to it. That's why they're succulent, so they can withstand long periods of drought. And then when the rain starts up again, all these little fine feeder roots will start popping out of that old thick taproot there, so shouldn't be a problem. I'm just going to mix a bit of their old soil into the new batch that I've put together, because there's really nothing wrong with the old stuff. I guess it's something to be a bit careful of. Sometimes you can bring pests and pathogens from old soil if you're transplanting it. Obviously, you know, if you've got root mealybug or something, you don't want to use old soil. But everything's been pretty pest free, so I'm not too concerned about it. Save a bit of money. And somehow I don't have any pumice. How the hell did I run out of pumice? So I'm going to be using this stuff just to bulk out the bit of a weird concoction I've just mixed up. It'll be fine. Anyway, use the old pots, stick them in there like that. This new soil mix is quite moist, so it may actually induce these plants to break dormancy. It's fine if they do. They know what they're doing better than I do. Some of these things, moisture is what triggers them to wake up. In other instances, it's purely based on temperature, and in a few curious cases, it's all about the length of the day, how much sunlight they're getting. I have no idea how they can figure these things out, but it just goes to show how special and mysterious plants are. We don't give them nearly enough credit. Bit of a shake to make sure there's no big gaps, air bubbles in there. And there you go. Well, that's 2 plants done. Have a dig around and see what else is going to come in here next. In this pot, you can see the tops of some bulbine Lolita seedlings. They're just starting to crack out of dormancy, and I think they'd probably like a bit more space. Bulbine Lolita is this very tiny geophytic species. Geophytic meaning that it lives underground. It's essentially a tuber. Bulbines, in my opinion, are one of the most underappreciated succulent families. It's probably because they sleep and disappear for half the year, but they're related to haworthias, they're related to aloes, and some of the shapes and colours and sizes that you can get with these things are absolutely amazing. Anyway, this particular species is the smallest of all the bulbines. It's only fairly recently come into cultivation. It's really cool. It looks like this tiny crystalline haworthia. So I'm going to dig them up and see how they look, and probably give them all a pot of their own so that they can grow on happily and successfully over the next 6 months or so. Here we go. Hopefully I don't lose any. So that's what a little bulbine Lolita tuber looks like after a year. Bit weird looking, hey? In this magnificently empty pot, I'm hoping under the soil line are some other types of bulbines. Bulbine bruinsii. In my opinion, this one here, this is the absolute peak of winter growing plants. I'm going to dig them up. I'm hoping they're there. Getting these things to germinate has been a multi-year process, and I'll be absolutely shattered if there's nothing left under the soil line. But I suppose, you know what, that's part of the fun of growing these plants that die all the way back. You just never know if they're going to make it through, what's lurking below. Anyway, Bulbine bruinsii. They're these fantastic, very fleshy leafed, ribbed monstrosities. I think having a look at them kind of speaks for itself why you'd want to grow them. They're so bizarre. Oh, gee whiz, the tubers on these are tiny. I don't want to lose those. Goodness, are they even alive? See what I mean? That's kind of what I'm looking for in that pot. They're pretty shriveled. I'm hoping that they're actually alive. I'm going to go hunting for them. I'm going to put them in this pot so I don't lose them, and hopefully they're not all dead. I guess the only way we're going to find out is when they get a bit of water and if they spring back to life. Far out. They're so much smaller than I expected. The fun thing is, if I miss any of them, and this is genuinely something I find amusing, if I do miss any of them, I'm going to tip this dirt into the rest of my mix here. And so it's entirely possible that what will happen is that any missed bulbs or tubers that go into this dirt get potted up with something else, and I could have some Bulbine bruinsii or indeed any other plants that I miss along the way popping up with another plant, which is always amusing. Less so because these plants are such an absolute beast to try and grow, but I reckon that's all of them. You know, reflecting on it, I reckon those Bulbine bruinsii tubers are so tiny, probably because of errors on my part. I was so desperate to have those seedlings that I was probably overly cautious with them. Maybe not enough water, not fertilized enough, I don't know. But whatever the case, the good news is they're quite firm to the touch, so I don't think they've completely dehydrated. I reckon they're going to be fine. Now, the next plant I want to share with you is in a family of plants, the Eriospermums. Really obscure genus, kind of signified by having one leaf that emerges from a thick, fleshy, tuberous cortex. I know there's a lot of cortex lovers who watch this channel who can't get enough of these weird niche things. So Eriospermum titanopsoides, I've actually got a few that are a bit older and a bit bigger. These things are so slow. Like, I cannot stress to you how long it takes for them to grow to any size of significance. 5-year-old one that I've got is kind of grows single leaf about the size of my pinky nail here. These ones are a year old. I'm expecting the tubers to be a couple of millimeters at best. So again, hoping not to lose them, because I'll tell you what, bloody hell, these things, they weren't cheap, these seeds either. So wish me luck. I'm going to try not to lose them, but I'd love to show you what they look like. You might be able to see, in fact, I'll show you a different pot. These have got 1-year-old seedlings of Eriospermum dregii, which is a more cordiciform, a kind of more traditionally raised, but you can see these tufts of hair. That's actually the old seed coat. They've got these furry white seed coats, and it persists. Over time it kind of breaks away and disappears, scattered with the wind, but it's an interesting little feature that separates them from everything else. Anyway, let's have a look at these. Get them out of the pot. I get rid of the topsoil. You can kind of see those furry tops on the top of these guys as well. Makes finding them pretty easy in the pot. All right, I'm going to loosen up that soil. And there we have it. One healthy, but very dormant Eriospermum titanopsoides. They're called titanopsoides because they look, or at least whoever named them thought they looked a little bit like the family of plants Titanopsis. The leaves are kind of warty and have this kind of crystalline bubble all over their surface. Really very, very cool plant and very hard to find in cultivation. But I'm hoping maybe with me advocating for them, people will become more interested in them and they'll become more readily available. Like a lot of plants, I know there's some very talented and very passionate growers in China who are getting these things out into the market. And the more people that are growing them, the better, I reckon. There's no downside. There's one. What an absolute ridiculous thing I'm doing today. Sifting through dirt trying to find microscopic little bulbs. Honestly, how undignified. These plants, I tell you what, they control me. I think that might be all of them. Somewhere amidst all this chaos, there's a couple of pots with Crassula umbella, which I'd like to share with you, but I need to find them first. What is this? Yes, Crassula umbella. These I think are flowering size bulbs. So I'm going to dig them up and for the first time ever, they're a few years old. I'll be interested to see how big they are. Sitting down is proving torturous on my back. Good news, I've got a great space to stand up and do some potting at least until everything's filled up. Here's the Crassula umbellas. Let me get them out of their pot and see what they're doing. I bet they are tiny. They're going to be these things that I'm going to lose as well, aren't they? I don't think there's one in my hand. Right, just in case, I can sift through this. In case there's any little corms or anything in there, they won't be lost. But you know what, I reckon there's one. I reckon there's one in this lump of dirt. Can I find it? Now when they're dormant they don't look like much, but they are one of the most beautiful plants you can possibly imagine. When I say they don't look like much, have a look at that. I don't even know what that is. It's just a lump of nothingness. Bigger than I expected though, so that's good news. Crassula umbella, people. What a fairly unremarkable thing. But when it starts to grow, it's going to send out this fantastic umbrella-like leaf. Beautiful, delicate flowers. It's no surprise that they are worth a pretty penny. Those Crassula umbellas are surprising because they're geophytic, which essentially means they kind of grow from an underground storage organ, and that's not a trait that we typically associate with crassulas. So Crassula umbella defies all those expectations. And there's another group of plants that are similar, because when I say pelargonium, well, I know what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking about those fleshy trunked plants that we find in our gardens. Some of them have some really very nice smelling leaves. But did you know there's also geophytic pelargoniums? Check this out. This is a pot of seedling Pelargonium tristes. I think that's right. And when I get them out of the ground, you're going to find that they've also got these thick, fleshy, tuberous roots. Favourite of cordiciform growers because you can raise them over time. They look absolutely fantastic. Look at that little delicate leaf on them. Let's get them out of their pot. these seedlings are going to need a bit more space. As you can see, there's about 5 of them in there. They're not going to be happy with another year of that, so we'll get them out and check them. As I like to say, what lurks below. All right, big reveal, and here's the biggest one. Get a load of that. Big, thick storage organ. Not bad for a plant that's about 1 year old. Its brothers and sisters are a little bit smaller, probably because this one has been taking up a lot of the nutrients and space. And curiously, oh goodness me, there's a lot of them in here. Here's another big one. So these are all going to need potting up in time. Which just means this thing is going to get filled up a whole lot quicker. Now, as with any cordex growing plant, the best advice is to keep that tuber underground until it's big enough that you want to raise it. Because generally speaking, these things, they don't get larger once they're exposed to the air. These little guys, they're nowhere near ready yet, so they're going to persist. Just the leaves appearing above the soil line, probably for the next few years anyway. And on the topic of pelargoniums, I've just remembered I've got a whole tray of plants ready to move straight in here. It's a tray of these little guys. These are the Monsonias. I've got 4 species that I sowed last year. Monsonia multifida, Salmoniflora, Pattersonii, and this one, Paniculina. And they're relatives of the pelargoniums. They live in some of the most arid regions of Western South Africa and Namibia. And in my opinion, they are some of the absolutely most fantastic plants going around. Now, they're all ready to put in here. They don't need any help whatsoever because I didn't actually let them go dormant over the summertime. They've been living in my laundry under lights, not on heat. And I've been giving them occasional waterings. Why? Because I've found that they're very sensitive when they're young plants, and I've wanted them to keep putting on size. If I didn't do it, I suspect there's a very good chance that my whole crop of them would have died over summer, which is precisely what happened the last time I tried to grow these things. But they're all looking pretty good. I did lose 1 or 2 of them, but you know, I expect that sort of thing. So now they're going to go in here. Because they're coming from artificial light into full sunlight, I'm going to drape some shade cloth over them just to stop them from getting burned and probably maimed and killed. But there's no rush because it's such a beautifully cloudy day today. I'll get around to it after I finish this video. Just moved a tray of conophytums and gibeums into the greenhouse. And they look like death warmed up. I mean, look at these things. You'd be pretty well forgiven for thinking that they're all dead, but they're not. Over summer, their leaves dry up and they form this kind of outer sheath that protects the new leaf pairs that are growing inside from the harshest sun and the heat and all the rest of it. But what I'm going to do now, I'm going to give them all a little sip of water, and that's actually going to break their dormancy, and their new leaves are going to puff right up and they're going to split, hopefully, out of those dry old sheaths. So what I'll do, I'll check back in a couple of days, and if you stick around to the end of the video, you'll be able to see just how these little guys have gone. Or maybe they're all dead. Find out soon. Here we go, little sips of waters. Don't want to give them too much. Don't want to drown them. Get a load of this. Whole pot. Trachyandra tortillus seedlings. Bulbs just sprouting in the darkness. I don't even know if I'm going to get around to potting them up today. So this space isn't just for winter growing plants. This is really about any plant that needs a different watering regime. I'm not going to get in there with my hose and just go wild. I'm going to be a little bit more careful. So the sorts of things that are going to go in there, apart from winter growers, you've got things like your habitat staged plants, like this peyote here, that's only going to get bottom watered. And most significantly, I'll go and get it. The old Stenoserius Benekii with that white farina, because as I've said 1,000 times on this channel, get water on the farina and off it comes straight away. And so I reckon keeping it in the dry, probably on the top shelf in there, is the best place for it. Very safe. And that means I can probably just set up a sprinkler or something in the main greenhouse. Save me a whole lot of time when it comes to watering if I take these plants out that need a little bit more specialised care. Anyway, the process continues. So another very notable species that's going in here, these are a pair of Aloedendron Palanzii, the biggest aloe tree in the world. Pretty hard to find these in cultivation. I'm very lucky to have them. Every time I show them on this channel, I get a whole heap of messages asking if they're for sale. They're not for sale. These ones are for me. They're going to go in there. Beautiful winter growing plants. And mercifully, they're big enough now that I don't get nervous over the summertime keeping them dry. When they were smaller, finding that delicate balance between letting them have a dormancy and keeping them hydrated, very hard. But now, big enough and tough enough that they can deal with it. This little one is a bit of a testament to that delicate balancing act. I spent all of last winter fighting off a fungal infection, you know, fungal sprays and the like, because I'd actually kept it a little bit too wet in the summertime. Its leaves are all kind of getting a bit manky, but the good news is it seems to be doing just fine now. I'll keep monitoring it. It is, however, noticeably smaller than its companions. I suppose one symptom of fighting off a disease. I'm going to get this one out of its pot, if for no other reason than to show you what I reckon is the most demonic, grotesque looking tuber of all of them. This is Bulbine torta, completely dormant at the moment, but have a look at this. It's a pretty gnarly, monstrous thing. Oh, so many roots. Look at that. How's that for an underground storage organ? Kind of dark, browny, reddish colour. All those tendrils. I don't know about you, looks like something straight out of hell to me. Ooh. You know what it's got? It's got a couple of root mealybugs. I'm glad I got it out of its pot. Time to give this one a clean up. See those little white waxy things on the roots? Those are root mealies. Not ideal. Doesn't look like they've caused this guy too much harm, but you don't really want them there. How do we deal with them? We spray with alcohol. In this spray bottle, just loaded up with methylated spirits. Unsurprisingly, mealybugs hate that sort of thing. Give them a spray and that'll take care of them without any problem. Won't hurt the plant either. It won't mind this one bit. Now that takes care of them pretty quickly, but if I've got them in one pot, there's a good chance that they're in plenty. It doesn't concern me greatly, because what I'll do is I'll give these plants a really healthy dose of a chemical called imidacloprid, which it's a pretty nasty pesticide. And normally I don't like using it on my plants. Reason being is if they flower and the bees get into it, kills the bees, not just that one bee, but it can kill a whole hive. However, these plants here, they're going to be cut off from the world. And so they're not really going to be flowering, and bees aren't going to be coming to visit. So with that in mind, what I will be doing is giving them a dose of that. Won't do anything now though, because the plants need to take it up into their system, and since they're dormant, won't have any impact. But this is a really good illustration of an important point, right? Plants are typically their most susceptible to pests when their metabolisms are low. That can be when they're unhealthy, if they're not getting the right amount of light. It's why so many indoor plants are plagued with pests, because they're generally struggling against a very artificial environment. But it's also true of dormant plants. Around here, I typically find that the only times I'm dealing with any sort of pest infestation, like these root mealies, is when my plants are sleeping. Anyway, do I go and unpot all the rest of them? Nah. This guy's fine, and I'm sure the others will be too. I'll tell you another plant that I think is really going to like it in here. This Haworthia truncata that I've habitat staged. I've been absolutely torturing it over the summertime. Why? Well, in habitat they don't really get a whole lot of summer rain, and typically the plants grow with their leaf tops flat to the soil, which is unlike how they typically grow in cultivation. So I've been trying to, I guess, give it a gentle nudge in that direction by withholding really any water and giving it more light than it's comfortable with. It's very stressed at the moment, but don't worry. When it gets in here, it's going to start getting a bit of a feed, and hopefully as new leaves start coming through, it will start presenting that flat to the soil line kind of growth pattern. I just kind of like how it looks as well. Anyway, shows you what you can do when you really push your plants to the limit, hey? So that's about 95% of the job done. I'll tell you what, I'm actually really surprised. There's more space in there than I expected. There's gaps. I totally expected this whole thing to be full by the end of today. I've given myself a bit of a rule when it comes to this greenhouse. I am not sowing more seeds unless I've got space to go in there. You know what, I already bought some seeds, so it's a good news that I've got space to put them into. There's a few more little things that need to be done. You know, I've got bulbs just sitting bare root that need to be fixed up. But other than that, I'm pretty excited about getting in here as the temperature cools down and having a whole different set of plants to care for. So I'll give you a bit of a tour and then we'll wrap it up, hey? Let's see. In we go. Now, nothing is really in any particular order, but you can see there's some pretty cool plants. Lots of pots that look just like empty dirt. All the Monsonias up here that need to be covered with shade cloth. And a few interesting specimens that will get some special care. Anyway, that's it from me today. I hope you enjoyed this little journey into the new summer rest house, and that's what it is. It's a place for these plants to rest over the summertime. Some of them will actually come out when the weather cools down and the rain starts to fall, because they don't mind a bit of moisture, but for now they're all going to live in here. They're all going to rest. That's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go and rest. Have a good one. Happy growing, and I'll see you next time. And what about those conophytums? Well, they started to wake up.